There's a war being fought right now, and the battlefield, well, it's the human eye. It's a high-stakes conflict for our vision, and it pits a single, focused innovator against some of the biggest titans in medical technology. The prize? It's dominance in a market that is absolutely set to explode.
So here's how we're going to break down this battle. First, we'll size up the opportunity, this massive growing market. Then, we'll get to know the players and their game plans. After that, we'll dive into the tech, look at the cold, hard financial facts from 2025, and finally, try to come to a verdict on what 2026 could look like for STAAR.
Okay, before we get into the corporate strategy and the stock prices, you have to understand the sheer scale of the problem these companies are trying to solve. This isn't some small niche market. We're talking about a genuine global health crisis in the making. Just look at this number. By 2050, it's projected that almost 5 billion people, that's nearly half the planet, will be nearsighted. Think about that. The demand for vision correction is just staggering, and it's turning this entire industry into a modern-day gold rush. And it's not just about being nearsighted either. As the world's population gets older, we're seeing a huge surge in other issues, like cataracts. So for these companies, this isn't a single battle. It's a multi-front war for market share, covering a whole range of vision problems. All right, let's meet the combatants. This is a classic David versus Goliath story, really, and it's all defined by two completely different ways of trying to win this war. On one side, you've got STAAR Surgical. They're the specialist, the innovator. They are betting the entire farm on one single potentially disruptive technology. And on the other side, you've got the giants. Companies like Alcon, who have built a fortress of different products, from simple contact lenses all the way to incredibly complex surgical machines. And this table just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? It shows STAAR's incredibly high-risk, high-reward strategy. For them, these implantable lenses are literally everything. Their entire company lives or dies by their success. But for a giant like Alcon, that same product line is less than 18% of their business. It's just one piece of a much, much larger empire. You see, the giants don't just sell you a product. They build these massive ecosystems that are almost impossible to escape. They lock surgeons into their expensive equipment, which they won't replace for years. And then comes the genius part. They make a steady, predictable river of cash from all the high-margin consumables you need for every single surgery. It's a powerful defensive moat, and it is incredibly tough to break through. So let's get down to the front line of this whole conflict, the technology itself. The fight for the eye is really a fight between two very different materials. At the very heart of this war is a fundamental choice in material science. STAAR's secret weapon is something called Collamer, a unique material based on collagen. The giants, meanwhile, rely on the industry's tried-and-true workhorse, hydrophobic acrylic, which is basically a very advanced, specialized plastic. STAAR's entire sales pitch is built around Collamer. They market it as a more natural solution, something that works in harmony with your body. Because it's so flexible, the surgery is less invasive. And here's the key part. Unlike LASIK, it doesn't require removing any part of your cornea, and the whole procedure is actually reversible. That's their big differentiator. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. How did these different strategies and technologies actually play out on the financial battlefield in 2025? Well, thanks to some exclusive analysis from HDIN Research, we can see the results, and they are pretty stark. And man, these numbers tell a brutal story. While giants like Johnson & Johnson were growing and Alcon's diversified business held steady, STAAR's sales just fell off a cliff, down almost 24%. And look at that operating margin. They went from making money to bleeding cash, with a staggering negative 38% margin. So what happened? What caused this massive collapse? It really comes down to a single point of failure. They were dangerously over-reliant on the Chinese market. When consumer spending in China took a major nosedive, it dragged STAAR's entire business down with it. Now, there was a bright spot, strong growth here in the US, but it was nowhere near enough to stop the bleeding. And this stock chart, well, it's the market's verdict, plain and simple. While the rest of the market and other healthcare stocks were trending up, STAAR's value just plummeted. That shows some really deep concern from investors about the company's financial health and its risky strategy. It's worth pointing out that this kind of deep dive financial analysis and a lot of the strategic insight in this breakdown is made possible by the really comprehensive data and research that our source, HDIN Research, puts together. So after a truly terrible 2025, the billion-dollar question is what happens next for STAAR Surgical. Can this specialist possibly recover? Let's look at both sides of the argument. So you have the bulls, the optimists. They'll tell you that STAAR's unique Collamer technology is a powerful weapon, and this massive myopia trend is a huge tailwind that will lift them up. They'll point to that 14% growth in the US as proof that the model works. But then you've got the bears, and they see a company with some critical, maybe even fatal flaws. That dangerous reliance on China, the fact that they're burning through cash, and this incredibly inefficient spending where their overhead costs are actually higher than their total revenue.
You know, this analysis from HDIN Research really just nails the core challenge here. The fundamental question is whether STAAR's one revolutionary weapon, its technology, is actually sharp enough to cut through the massive structural and financial advantages that the giants have built up over decades.
And that leaves us right here with the critical question for 2026 and beyond. Is STAAR's Collamer lens a true game changer that's destined to win this war for the eye? Or is the specialist, for all its innovation, simply going to run out of ammunition and become another casualty in a market that is just dominated by titans? The battle is definitely far from over,